The rain had been falling since morning, the kind of soft, steady drizzle that made the whole neighborhood in Portland feel quiet and sheltered. Like the world had slipped into a slower rhythm. Inside Emma's small but warm living room, the soft glow of a single lamp touched the edges of the walls. She liked evenings like this. It felt safe, predictable, peaceful. She had spent years rebuilding her life to feel exactly like this, steady and calm after the storms of divorce and change. She wasn't a professional masseuse, but she had always been good with her hands. When someone was tired or overwhelmed, she knew how to help them loosen their shoulders, ease a headache, or let go of a little tension. It was something she offered. Naturally, the way some people offered warm tea or a listening ear. It wasn't a habit born from obligation. It was simply kindness. And kindness was one of the things she still believed in. Her adult stepson, Caleb, stopped by that evening. Without warning. He did that sometimes, knocking on the door with a tired smile, saying he just wanted to check in. His father, Mark, was on a business trip, so it was just the two of them, the quiet of the rain, and the faint smell of lavender drifting from a small diffuser in the corner. Caleb looked exhausted the moment he stepped inside. Not physically. Sick, just worn, like life had been leaning too hard on him lately. Long week, Emma asked as he set his coat on the chair. You could say that? He gave a dry laugh that didn't match his usual easy humor. She didn't push him, she never did. Instead, she warmed lavender oil between her palms, a familiar motion that carried a sense of comfort. When she offered him a shoulder massage, he accepted almost instantly. He always did after hard weeks. Wasn't strange between them. It was simply a leftover habit from the early years of blended family life, when she tried her best to help him settle after the divorce of his parents. He had grown into adulthood, but some gestures remained gentle, respectful, and rooted in trust. As he settled onto the couch, she noticed the way he kept rubbing his forehead, like he was trying to push away thoughts rather than pain. Are you sure this helps? She asked softly. Yeah, he said, closing his eyes. It really does. But something was different tonight. His shoulders weren't just tense. They were tight with something deeper. Usually he relaxed within minutes, but tonight he stayed stiff, his breath uneven. After a few quiet moments, he spoke again, his voice lower, as if thinking hard before each word. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. Emma paused, her hands hovering for a brief second. His tone wasn't heavy, but it carried a weight she couldn't name. She stepped back mentally, preparing for anything. A question about his dad, about the family, maybe something about money or his job. She didn't know, but she could feel the shift in the air. It was small, but real. Okay, she said gently. What is it? Caleb swallowed once, like he needed strength just to speak. How did you do it? He asked quietly. How did you stay strong after your divorce? Emma blinked. She hadn't expected that. Out of all the things he could have asked, that wasn't even on her list. The massage suddenly felt unimportant compared to the look on his face, lost, wounded, searching. He kept his eyes down, almost embarrassed. I know it's personal, but I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been trying to figure out how you didn't fall apart completely. Emma sat back slightly, the air shifting again. She felt the memory of her own heartbreak rise slow, sharp but no longer painful. Just a memory of a storm she had survived. What brought this on? She asked softly. He hesitated, his voice cracking just enough to reveal the answer before he spoke. I don't know how to move on from my breakup, he admitted. I thought I did. I thought I was handling it, but lately, feels like I'm stuck in the same place and I don't know how to get out. Emma's heart tightened. What? Romantically, not in any complicated or inappropriate way, but in a simple, human way. This was the kind of pain she recognized. It's the kind that made people question themselves late at night. The kind that made even strong adults feel lost. She untangled her hands from the lavender oil and sat beside him, keeping respectful space. The moment didn't need touch, now it needed truth. He looked up at her with tired eyes and whispered something that fully broke the quiet of the room. Could you tell me how you survived it? Because I'm not sure I'll survive this. The question hit her like a sudden knock on a locked door. Unexpected, deep, and impossible to ignore. Everything in the room felt still, like the universe was holding its breath. And Emma knew in that moment this conversation would change something for him. And maybe for her too. The room was quiet except for the gentle tapping of rain against the windows. Emma had set aside the massage, her hands now resting in her lap as she sat beside Caleb on the couch. His eyes were fixed on the floor, and the weight of unspoken words filled the space between them. She could feel it, the tension that wasn't just in his shoulders or neck, it was in his heart. Was carrying more than fatigue. He was carrying loneliness, regret, and confusion. I don't even know who I am anymore, Caleb said softly, finally looking up. His voice was raw, like he had been holding it in for weeks. Everything feels wrong. I keep thinking about her, about what went wrong, and I can't shake it. Emma nodded slowly, understanding exactly what he meant. She remembered feeling the same way after her own marriage ended, the days when she would sit on the kitchen floor, staring at the walls, wondering how life had turned out this way. Those were the days when everything felt heavy and endless. She wanted to tell him that the heaviness would pass, that life had a way of moving forward even when it seemed impossible. Caleb, she said gently, placing a hand near his but not touching him yet. Healing doesn't start by figuring out what went wrong or blaming yourself. It starts by remembering who you were before all of this happened. He frowned slightly, as if the idea was foreign. I don't even know who that person is anymore. Emma could see the desperation in his eyes. She realized then that what he truly needed wasn't advice or quick answers or even a massage. It was someone to really listen, someone to hold. Space for his pain without judgment. She leaned back slightly, letting him feel that he wasn't alone, that he could speak and someone would hear him. You're not broken, Caleb, she said softly. You're just grieving. It's okay to feel lost sometimes. That doesn't mean you're failing. He swallowed hard, as if those words were both comforting and foreign. I feel like I should be over it by now, he admitted. Everyone else seems to move on. Why can't I? Emma took a deep breath, recalling her own long, difficult journey. Healing doesn't follow a timeline, she said. It's not about being done by a certain date or measuring yourself against others. It's about taking one step at a time, even when it's hard. Even when it feels like you're standing still. He nodded slowly, absorbing her words, and for a moment the room was just two people sitting in quiet solidarity. Then he whispered something that made her heart tighten, not in fear or discomfort, but in recognition of his vulnerability. Could you stay a little longer? Just talk with me. I don't want to feel alone tonight. Emma felt a rush of emotion. She understood completely. The human need to be seen, to be heard, to have someone beside you when the world feels heavy. She moved, closer but carefully, still maintaining that space of respect. Of course, she said softly. I'll stay. For the next hour, they talked. Emma shared stories of her own struggles, the mistakes she had made, and the quiet ways she had found to rebuild her life. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She told him about the nights she cried alone, the mornings she forced herself to get out of bed, and the small victories that eventually added up to something meaningful. Caleb listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes letting silence fill the gaps. Each story seemed to chip away a little at the weight on his chest. He laughed softly at a memory of Emma fumbling through a yoga class years ago. He winced at a story of her heartbreak. He sighed deeply at the honesty in her words. By the time the rain had slowed to a light drizzle, his shoulders had relaxed, his face less tense. Thank you, he murmured, his voice quieter now but steadier. I haven't talked like this in I don't know how long. Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. That's why we're here, Caleb, to share the load, even if just for a little while. You don't have to carry everything alone. He looked at her with something close to awe. The kind of trust that only comes from being truly seen, I think. I think I understand a little more now, he said. It doesn't feel as heavy anymore. She reached out and lightly rested, her hand on his shoulder not as a comfort of obligation, but as a simple gesture of solidarity. Healing takes time, she reminded him, and it's okay to ask for help along the way. You're not weak for doing that. He nodded, and for the first time that evening, there was a hint of peace in his expression. It wasn't the end of his pain, not by a long shot, but it was the first quiet step toward moving forward. And for Emma, that was enough. Because sometimes, she realized, the greatest gift you could give someone wasn't advice or a solution or even a massage. It was the patience to sit with them in their silence, the courage to let them open up, and the quiet presence that said, "You are not alone." The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, leaving the streets outside glistening under the dim streetlights. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of lavender, a quiet reminder of the massage that had started the evening. Emma and Caleb were still, sitting on the couch, but the atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer about relaxation, it was about honesty, about the truths that people often avoided until they could no longer. Caleb's shoulders had eased, but his eyes still carried a shadow of uncertainty. He looked at Emma with a mixture of trust and confusion. I feel better than I did before, but also, I don't know. I feel like I'm leaning on you too much, he admitted, his voice hesitant. Am I crossing a line? Emma took a deep breath. She had felt this coming, the invisible boundary that separated care from dependence. She cared for him deeply, but she knew the importance of maintaining a healthy distance. It was the only way for him to grow, to heal, to rebuild himself. Caleb, she said gently, there is a line. And it's important we respect it, not because I don't want to help, but because sometimes loving someone means giving them the space to stand on their own. He frowned, uncertainty flickering across his features. So, I'm asking too much. No, she replied softly. You're asking for support, and that's natural. But I can't be the only person you rely on. You need to learn to trust yourself and take small steps toward your own healing. Caleb leaned back, absorbing her words. He wasn't angry or hurt. He was thinking, weighing the truth. So, what did you do when you realized someone was depending on you too much? He asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back, even when it's hard. Even when you want to fix everything for someone. Because real growth happens when they face life's challenges on their trays, and when they're spacely as a challenge is on their own with the confidence they've built themselves. Caleb's eyes softened. He was listening, really listening, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind. It's just scary, he admitted. I don't want to feel alone again. I don't want to make the same mistakes. Emma nodded. She understood that fear well. I know. I've been there too. But being alone for a moment doesn't mean being abandoned. It means learning who you are when no one else is holding you up. And that's powerful. He let out a slow breath, trying to absorb the weight of her words. There was a flicker of relief, a hint of hope beginning to form in his chest. I think. I get it. But it's hard to trust myself after everything. That's why you start small, she said, smiling gently. Step by step. Trust one decision, one choice at a time. And celebrate those victories, even if they're tiny. You're stronger than you think. The room grew quiet for a moment, but it wasn't empty. It was full of understanding, of shared experience, of the fragile yet steady connection between them. Caleb finally met her gaze, and in that look, she saw both fear and determination. He was afraid to let go of the comfort of leaning on her, but he was also beginning to see the strength he had within himself. I don't feel like I'm ready to do it alone yet, he admitted honestly. But I think I could try. With your guidance. Emma nodded, proud of his honesty. That's all anyone can ask. You don't have to leap into independence overnight. But acknowledging that you need to start is the first step. And I'll be here to support you. In the right way, at the right time. Caleb smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and hope. I think I finally understand what you meant about stepping back. It's not leaving someone behind. It's helping them find their own way. Exactly, Emma said softly. And once you've taken those steps, you'll find confidence you didn't know you had. You'll discover joy again, real, lasting joy. The lamp in the corner cast a warm glow over the room, making the shadows soft and gentle. The tension that had filled Caleb's posture earlier was gone, replaced by a quiet strength. He leaned back, finally at ease, but still thoughtful, still processing the lessons she had shared. Thank you, he said quietly, for being honest with me, for not just letting me lean on you blindly. Emma smiled, a mix of pride and relief washing over her. That's what family does, she said. We care, we guide, and sometimes we step back so the people we love can grow. For a long moment, they sat together in silence, the rain outside slowing even more, the world beyond the windows feeling distant. The room was no longer just a living room. Met was a space of learning, trust, and beginnings. And in that quiet, both of them understood that the hardest choices were often the most loving, because love, Emma realized, was not always about closeness. Sometimes it was about knowing when to let go, just enough so someone could rise on their own. And Caleb, for the first time in weeks, felt ready to try. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets outside glistening under the soft light of street lamps. Inside, the room smelled faintly of lavender, the quiet reminder of the evening's earlier massage. Emma and Caleb still sat on the couch, but the energy between them had shifted. It was lighter now, filled with the kind of calm that comes after sharing truths and facing fears together. Caleb leaned back, his shoulders more relaxed than they had been all evening. I think I understand what you mean about stepping back, he said quietly. It doesn't feel like you're abandoning someone. It feels like giving them space to grow. Emma smiled softly. Exactly. And giving space doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you trust that they can handle life's challenges and that they'll find strength they didn't know they had. He nodded slowly, thinking it over. I've spent so long depending on other people for support. Didn't realize I was holding myself back too. That's natural, Emma said. We all rely on others sometimes, but real progress happens when you start trusting yourself. And you can start small, one step at a time, one decision at a time. You'll learn from them, and with each success, you'll feel stronger. Caleb sighed, a mixture of relief and apprehension on his face. I'm scared, though. I don't want to fall back into old habits. I don't want to feel lost again. Emma reached over gently, placing a hand on his shoulder in a simple, comforting gesture. You might stumble, she said, but that's okay. Falling isn't failing. It's learning. And I'll be here to guide you, to support you, and to remind you of your strength. But the steps forward, you have to take them yourself. He looked at her, a small, hopeful smile appearing. I think I'm ready to try. Not alone, but ready. That's the right mindset, Emma replied. Healing doesn't happen all at once, and growth takes patience. But you've already started by recognizing what you need and asking for it. That's courage. Caleb exhaled slowly, a weight seeming to lift from his chest. Haven't felt this light in a long time. I guess I didn't realize how heavy the past was holding me down. Emma nodded. It's easy to forget how much the past can shape us until we start letting it go. And letting go doesn't mean forgetting it, means choosing to move forward with the lessons, not the pain. He smiled faintly, a little self-conscious. But the warmth in his eyes was undeniable, I guess. This is the first time I feel like I can actually move forward without fear. You can, she said firmly. You've already begun. And tomorrow and the next day, you'll keep taking steps. Each one counts. Caleb leaned back and looked around the room, taking in the quiet, the warm glow of the lamp, and the soft shadows the light cast across the walls. The world outside still held uncertainty, but inside he felt a rare sense of peace. "I never thought a conversation could make such a difference," he said quietly. Emma chuckled softly. "Sometimes. It's not the big gestures that matter. It's the honest words, the patience, and the willingness to face the truth. Those are the things that change us." He nodded, taking her words to heart. "Thank you," he said again, his voice sincere. "Not just for listening, but for helping me see that I can do this, that I can heal." Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The evening had been emotional, intense, and honest. She had been careful to guide him without taking control, to offer comfort without creating dependence. And seeing him begin to understand his own strength was the reward she hadn't realized she had been waiting for. "You're stronger than you know," she said softly. "And the courage to face your feelings, to admit your fears, is proof of that strength. Remember it, Caleb? Carry it with you and let it guide you." He smiled, a full, genuine smile this time, the kind that reached his eyes and lifted his spirit. "I will. I promise. I think this is the start of something better? Not perfect, but real." Emma nodded, feeling a quiet pride in his words. "It is. And sometimes starting is all that matters. The rest comes step by step, day by day." The room grew still, the rain outside long gone, leaving only a sense of calm and possibility. Caleb leaned back fully, finally at ease, and for the first time in weeks he felt like he could breathe. "Good night, Emma," he said softly, his voice steady, "and thank you for doing the hard thing." Emma stood, giving him a reassuring nod. "Good night, Caleb. You're going to be okay, I promise." As she left the room, she felt the weight of the evening settle gently into her chest. The hardest choices often carried the most love, and she knew she had made the right one. Caleb was starting to heal, starting to see his own strength, and the quiet hope between them promised brighter days ahead.